Hi, Homeworthy. I'm Alex. Welcome to my home in Los Angeles. Come on in.
You're watching Homeworthy, where we believe every home has a story.
Hi, I'm Alex Yeske, and I'm an interior designer. We are in Los Angeles on the west side, not too far from the ocean and the coast. And the house is a pretty simple 2 beds, 1 bath, small little California bungalow. It was built in 1950, and a lot of the original detailing is still here, and we've tried to keep that intact as we've designed the home. So we chose this house because we wanted to be on the west side of LA, and we loved the neighborhood itself. It's very charming and full of, similar style homes, and we loved the backyard, which you'll see at some point, but we also loved that it had been very lightly touched. So there was a lot of room for us to make our mark on the house. So it was very lightly renovated before we bought it, and we were able to kind of make our mark, and I could practice all of my interior design tricks here, kind of use it as a laboratory testing ground. So I'm originally from the East Coast, from New Jersey, and I grew up in a house that was older, and we grew up around antiques, and so I love traditional interiors. I like layering in antiques and vintage pieces. I'm always sourcing things from flea markets and antique stores, and finding ways to mix that in with newer contemporary pieces so that it doesn't feel too one note or like it's from a certain period of time. I love to work in mostly neutral colors pulled from the natural environment, and lots of like browns, blues, greens, and love little floral accents, which you'll see kind of throughout. Welcome to our entryway and living space. Our entryway is a small little moment in the corner here. Our front door opens right into the living room, so we wanted to create a little bit of an entry moment. We found this antique Martha Washington sewing cabinet when we first bought the house, and it's really cool. It used to be used for sewing, and so there's these really deep cabinets on the side where they would put their sewing, knitting needles, yarn, fabric. We use it more for like umbrellas and our dog's leash and things like that. But it's a really cool piece. It fit perfectly in the space and worked for our little entry. Over here is the living space. So our front door opens kind of right into the living room. So we wanted to keep it feeling really open, not closing off the space. So we created a little separation though with the couch facing the windows. These chairs were in my grandmother's mid-century home back on the East Coast where I'm from, and I love them that they remind me of being in her house, and they actually still make a really wonderful creaking sound that it takes me right back to her house and growing up, and everyone always freaks out that they're gonna break them when they sit in them, but they're fine. But I love that. And it's fun to have that memory incorporated in our house here in LA. In our whole home, but also in this room, we have a lot of secondhand vintage antique pieces. So this is actually a coffee table that we bought of some friends of ours. I love to display home decor books and objects, and I loved that it had this lower shelf so I could display things and my husband could still utilize the top for function. I used to always get in trouble for messing up our coffee table and you couldn't actually use it because there was so much decor on it. So this kind of works for both of us. Once we figured out the living room layout, we wanted a little piece of furniture to go under the TV and this gallery wall. So I had this skirted console made, and it's a really pretty fabric that I've always loved with like a subtle stripe, and underneath is actually storage because our house is still pretty small, so I need all the space I can get to stash things away. So there's a lot of dishware and objects under there for when we're entertaining. dining. A lot of the artwork is vintage or antique or something unique that I took from a magazine or an event. So like these two sunrise and sunset pieces are from a magazine that I tore out and framed. And the piece on the lower right is from the Noguchi Museum in New York City. It's like their handout when you go there, but I just loved it. It's an old New York mag cover with Noguchi himself with one of his paper lanterns. And I thought it was really cool, and I love that it has like this little crinkle from when I was moving it around that day. The lamp is also a vintage find from one of the many flea markets here in LA. You can find me at them pretty much every Sunday. I love going to them always. I'm shopping for clients and myself. So that was found at a flea market, and then this special box I found on a trip to London last year. It's an old tea caddy, and I loved the stripe of the marquetry of the wood, and I love it playing off of the striped console. And then we recently got this new rug, which is also striped, and so I just think it's a very fun little moment of playing with the scale and of the same pattern. In the same room as the living room, we have our dining space, and it's a tight spot, so we found this table that worked perfectly. It's a little bit narrower than most dining tables, and it just fit perfect. And I loved the marble top is a nice complement to all of the kind of warmer tones that are happening with our woven shades and natural fiber rug and the bamboo chairs. It just offers like a nice, cool, different type of material. And this area, although it's small, also houses a lot of my favorite pieces that I found. So the mirror I found at a flea market and refinished it into this like creamy white. And the plates were found at an estate sale. I actually saw them, thought about them for 2 days, and then went back on the last day to get them because I envisioned them exactly as they are. And we have some cool art over here. This is just a vintage seascape, but the piece on the bottom is actually a framed receipt from a trip to France and a memorable meal at a really cool hotel. And I had seen somebody else do this, and I just thought it was such a cool way to capture a memory and have it on display in your house. So that's a really fun little moment here. The light in here is also a vintage find. It is, I believe, mid-century from Vienna, and I bought it online, but was looking for something that wasn't too low and just worked really nicely in the room. And this was perfect. I love the perforation on the metal. Gives it a little bit of an extra detail. We have this amazing antique hutch that I looked forever to find the perfect piece for this spot. I really wanted something that had glass doors on top so that I could display all of my books and treasured objects, and also had some closed storage for entertaining things. So there's some really cool pieces within here. This platter we got on our honeymoon in Italy. This little flower ceramic object was actually inspiration for some wine goblets a friend and I created. I just started collecting Tiffany terracotta pieces, so I have a couple of those in there. And it's a fun place to just kind of rotate stuff through that's inspiring me. This was my first point project that I did during the pandemic, and I use it as a Christmas ornament at Christmas time, but otherwise I have it here on display. This piece stores some of our entertaining linens, tablecloths, that sort of thing. And so in this top drawer, we have all of our napkins, and it was a fun little design detail to add some leftover wallpaper from the hallway behind me inside as a little drawer liner, just to kind of connect the spaces and just utilize some extra material that we had. It makes me happy every time I open it and look at it. This is our little dog Bear, and this is a fun little spot I created for him out of this wicker bench that I found at a flea market, and then made him a custom little cushion with some fun fabric also from the flea market, and he loves to just sit up here. It's his spot in our living room. This table is one of my favorite auction finds. I found the table online on Live Auctioneers, loved it, had no place for it for a client or myself, and still got it anyway. And it ended up to be perfect for this corner. We display family photos here, and it's just a nice spot to kind of corral everything. I like all the mismatched frames that I collect from flea markets and antique sales. I also love this lamp that it's like silver and more contemporary feeling. It kind of gives a nice counterbalance to everything else that's old around it, like these old botanicals that we have and the hutch. It just adds like a nice little contemporary nod. This room that we're sitting in right now, which is a mix of living and dining, is my favorite room in the house. It houses a lot of my favorite finds that I've had and some meaningful pieces. The chairs that are in the window they belong to my paternal grandmother, so they were in her home, which was also like a mid-century modern on the East Coast, and it's really cool to incorporate them here. So this space is very cozy. We spend a lot of time here, and I just love a lot of the little details that are all throughout it. So now we're going into the kitchen, which we haven't done a lot of work to. We just did some painting, and when we bought the house, they had done some new tile, which I love the kind of classic tile pattern that they chose. But we did some painting in here. We updated hardware. We did some painted knobs on the cabinets, and then these really fun rattan and iron pulls on the drawers and on our pantry as well. Just a simple, small kitchen, but we love it. It gets the job done. And we also love that it has views into the backyard, and we get to see nature and kind of live that indoor-outdoor California lifestyle. I love to add in warmth to kitchens whenever possible, and I like to bring in kind of warmer textures because kitchens and bathrooms especially tend to be much colder. You know, you have hard stone or tile surfaces, so we brought in some warmth with our woven wood shades and added this textural rug. The rattan handles add a bit of warmth to the kitchen. We don't have one, but I love adding a little table lamp in the kitchen on the counter if you have the space for it. And I think the biggest piece of advice for smaller kitchens is to try to keep things minimal and clean. We like to corral things in a lot of trays and dishes, platters, just to kind of keep things tidy and always looking clean. So now we're outside in our backyard. We have a great little seating area here for when we're entertaining and having dinner outside. And then we also have a little seating area where I like to do cocktails with people. And then this is my garden that has been a fun work in progress over the years that we've lived here. I love to grow cut flowers. So these are some remnants of what was left from the summer. And we created this this is called willow edging, and it's very popular in England, which I draw a lot of influence from English gardens. So it's a fun little design detail. And then this potting bench, I actually made with my dad on one of his visits out to California. We found the table on the side of the street in our neighborhood and then completely transformed it into what it is now. And it's just a fun spot to display pots and different plants. And I don't use it too much as an actual workbench because it's just so pretty, but it's a fun moment and memory with my dad. Now that you've seen the main living spaces and the backyard, I'm gonna take you to the bedrooms, but first I wanna show you one of my favorite areas of the house, which is this little hallway. We wanted to create this fun focal moment because you get a glimpse of this hallway from nearly every room in the house. So we decided to do some wallpaper, and the scale of this floral wallpaper was just perfect for the size of the hallway. I love the little hit of blue, which carries into a lot of the rooms off of the hall. And Again, it's filled with some favorite antique vintage finds. This mirror is a really cool, actually, replica of an antique mirror. And this table is antique, and some cool objects that are also antiques. And I just love mixing the character in that comes from using antiques and vintage pieces. Makes it feel so much more special and interesting. Now we're going to go into our bedroom. We wanted this space to feel really calming and serene, so it's primarily whites and ivories and some neutral tones. And I loved bringing in little mixes of pattern, little hits of pattern in the drapery, the pillow on the bed, and we also had this custom curtain made to go behind the bed, which just adds some interest. And you know, in California, we don't put art above our beds, so just brings a little something extra since we can't have artwork there. The two nightstands are really cool antique and vintage pieces that we searched for a long time to find stuff that was the right scale for the space. This is an antique piece that we found at an auction in Northern California, and I'm just in love with the character and the details. The hardware is so special. There's lots of imperfections in it, but I think it's so beautiful and such a beautiful color. And this is a piece that I know we'll have forever in any home that we live in. This little lamp is a fun find from a flea market for $5. I thought it was so perfect, and I love the scale. I love the bronze detailing, even though it's not real bronze. It's just very beautiful. I love the scale of it here. This artwork we actually had in our New York apartment in our living room, so it's nice to see it every day in our bedroom. We got rid of a lot of the pieces that we had in New York, but this is one thing that carried through. My husband and I have been together since we were 18, so we have some fun photo booth strips, and we put these two in a frame just to have as a cute memory. And my niece did this painting of our dog Bear for Christmas last year, and I had to frame it. And I love looking at it. It makes me smile every day. So I wanted the bedroom to feel really serene, and I wanted to still have some interest within the textiles. So I found this really lovely silk quilt that has this box stitch on it, and then kind of echoed that in the rug. Also has a similar box stitch detail, and brought in some pretty neutral patterns in the pillows and also the drapery. Now we're gonna go into the bathroom, which is a very small space and is actually the room we've done the least amount of updating to. So it has the original tile from the 1950s, which I love. It's a fun little neutral, but still has some interest tile. We skim coated all the walls in here ourselves, which was quite the DIY project. And we painted this cabinetry, this dark chocolate brown, and changed out some hardware just to give it a little bit of interest. And we have like the original sink here, added this skirt so that we could hide some stuff underneath. Again, some clever storage. We have cleaning products and that sort of stuff underneath. Yeah, we just kind of wanted to warm it up and make it feel like us. And eventually we're planning to do a much bigger renovation, and we'll tackle this then. But for now, this did the trick. When we painted the bathroom, we decided to bring the cabinet color onto the back of the door. And I just love that design detail. It's surprising. You don't really notice it until you're in the bathroom, and it's just a fun little surprise. My favorite tips to create a well-designed home is to buy things you love, not just things that are trendy or you see everywhere. Because if you buy things you really love, you'll love them for a long time, and you'll find ways to mix them together. And the space will really feel like you. I also advise buying the best quality that you can afford. I love mixing in vintage and antique pieces because they're kind of pre-worn in. You don't have to worry about damaging them. They've lived a life already, and they can stand the test of time to continue living another life in your home. Yeah, just buy things you love so the house is representative of you, and don't get too stuck on following trends or what you think is right or what you should do. And the last room in our home is our home office / guest bedroom. So I work from this space and it also doubles as a guest room. I love rattan, which I'm sure you've figured out from the tour already. So this desk was a really fun auction find and adds so much interest to the room. And when guests come, we just move it to this side of the room, and this sofa pulls out into a sofa bed. I always wanted a chocolate brown sofa, and a designer friend of mine was getting rid of this when she was moving cross country. So I jumped on the chance to get it from her, and it works perfectly in here. It's great for guests, but it looks great in the background of my Zooms and all of that. We have another vintage find. This was an early find for the house. Didn't have a spot in mind, but I love bamboo tables. They're so versatile. You can use them in so many spaces and rooms. And I loved the size of this one, and it ended up working perfectly in here as a little nightstand side table for when we have guests. This lamp is really cool. It's a vintage find, but it has this cool kind of tortoise horn detailing on it, and I just had never seen another lamp like that, so had to have that. And I love the way that it echoes the detailing on the table that it sits on. This is my inspiration board, and I love to change it out, and it's actually magnetic, and so I'm always changing things out. It's super easy. And I got this idea from another designer friend of mine in her office. It's actually a magnetic linen wallpaper that we bought and then framed really nicely. And I just love that it's a little different than a normal pin board. It's a little cleaner, more streamlined, but I love to hang up inspiration photos, pieces of fabric that are inspiring me. It's always changing, and it's also a nice little glimpse into what's inspiring me right now. And I also keep little business cards and messages from friends and business partners that are just nice and inspiring when you need a little pick-me-up. This piece of art is an auction find, and I feel like it is my color palette in a painting, and had to have it, and it works perfectly in this room, and it pulls in all the tones, the chocolate brown, the pale blues, it pulls in the olive green ceiling detail, and I just love it, and it makes me happy all the time, and I see it constantly. So this cabinet does triple duty in here. It helps store all of our fabrics and samples down here, nicely organized, although it needs a little bit of a refresh and edit. But up here we have our inspirational books and things we turn to more frequently in our design projects. And one of my favorite things that I have in here is this little miniature collection of silly little objects. I love gardening, as you've seen, so I found this little brass watering can and terracotta pots at an estate sale. Recently found this tiny little basket, and they're just so silly, but I love them, and they make me happy in here, seeing them every day. I also have some lampshades that didn't work in a project, but I love seeing the pattern every day. So rather than getting rid of them, I just kind of kept them and display them here. I also utilize the top space as some extra storage for different vases and vessels I have to create flower arrangements. I'm kind of always creating arrangements in the house, and so it's fun to have a spot to pull from here as well as in the kitchen. And these are usually my favorite ones that I have out on display. Home means a place that you're able to be yourself, be comfortable, relax, recharge. I'm a bit of an introvert. I like to go out and socialize, but home is really where I recharge and reset. So to me, like, having a really comfortable space helps me reset and go back out into the world and do my job and be creative and all of those things.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to go to homeworthy.com for exclusive content, shopping guides, and so much more.